Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here with you for what I think is one of the most important conversations of our times. The real truth about health. We know it doesn't come from the drugstore. It doesn't come from the healthcare industry. It comes from how we live, from what we create together, from the food we eat, from the way that we interact with the world around us. And I am so happy that you are willing to step outside of the status quo of a toxic food culture to ask what else is possible for me, for my loved ones, and for my planet. So as Stephen was just sharing, my grandpa founded an ice cream company. And my dad John grew up with an ice cream cone-shaped swimming pool in the backyard, 31 flavors of ice cream in the freezer. He was groomed from early childhood to one day join in running that company. At the age of 6, he was sweeping the floors in the factory. As he got a little older, he was given more and more responsibility. It was his father's dream that his son would inherit this business. When my dad was in his late teens, his uncle Bert Baskin became very ill, had multiple heart attacks, ended up dying of heart disease at the age of 54. My grandpa could see that coming. He wanted his son to become his partner in the business. My dad said no. And he walked away from a path that was practically paved with gold, as well as ice cream, to follow his own rocky road, as we say. And he did move to a little island off the coast of Canada, where he and my mom built a one-room log cabin, grew most of their own food, practiced yoga and meditation for several hours a day, and named their kid Ocean. They almost named me Kale. And this was before kale was cool. For the sake of my future social life, I'm glad they took the conservative route when they named their son. But we did eat a lot of kale, along with cabbage and carrots and onions and broccoli and all sorts of other vegetables from the garden. And we ate a very healthy diet, and we lived a healthy life, and it showed up. At the age of 10, I ran my first marathon. I was setting records, elementary school records, granted, for push-ups and pull-ups, and we were all very physically fit. And then my dad began working on a book called Diet for a New America. He was researching the American food system that he had grown up in, and he wanted to share with the world the power of food to be a stand for health, for our bodies and health for our planet. He published Diet for a New America in 1987. It inspired millions of people to look at their food choices as a chance to make a difference on the planet. The media had a lot of fun with the story. They called him the rebel without a cone. We received over 20,000 letters from people. Handwritten letters, back before email, from people thanking him for changing their lives. One of his readers, as fate would have it, ended up being my grandpa. So my grandpa, Irvin Robbins, had lost his brother-in-law and business partner, Bert Baskin, to heart disease at the age of 54. My grandpa was not exactly on the leading edge of health consciousness, and so he was of the belief that there was no connection between food and health. When my dad had asked him if he thought there might be any connection between the amount of ice cream that his Uncle Bert would eat and his fatal heart attack, my grandpa said no. His ticker just got tired and stopped working, and we will never discuss this again. But now my grandpa was 71, and he was facing serious type 2 diabetes, weight issues, and heart problems himself. And his doctors told him he didn't have long to live unless he made some big changes. And then his cardiologist gave him a copy of a certain book by the name of Diet for a New America and suggested he read it, which my grandpa did. Not the signed copy my dad had sent him, but the copy the cardiologist gave him, because now it had been blessed by the high priest of Western medicine. He didn't just read it, though. He followed its advice. He started eating a lot less animal products. He gave up sugar. He even gave up ice cream. And he started eating a lot more whole plant foods. And he got results. Predictable results that we see time and again when people make these kinds of changes. He got off all of his diabetes and blood pressure medications, which he no longer needed. He lost a lot of weight that he badly needed to lose. His golf game improved 7 strokes. He was a happy camper, and he added another couple decades of health to his life. When the time finally did come, he was on his deathbed in his 90s, and my dad and I were with him. And he said to my dad, he said, "When you left Baskin Robbins, I thought you were crazy." And I might have been right. He said, "But thank God some of us have lived long enough to learn a few new things." And he said, and he looked at both of us and he said, "I want you to know that I'm proud of you because you're making a difference and you're helping people be happier and healthier, and that's a good thing." Do you have any idea how much courage it takes for a man with that kind of business success, who has that much investment in believing that ice cream makes people happy, make those kinds of changes? I mean, he was one stubborn cookie. And he could have taken that stubborn cookiness right to the grave. And most men in his position would have. But my grandpa made the choice to listen to his doctors, and he wanted to live more than he wanted to be right. And so he made changes, and he got results. And to me, he is a hero. Yes, I'm proud of his business accomplishments because he was very good at what he did. But he was also a hero because he had the courage to change and to learn and to listen to the renegade son who turned his back on his life's work because he was more interested in life than he was in always being right. And to me, that's something we can all learn from, because I don't know if you've ever found it hard to change an old habit or met people who are kind of entrenched in their ways. But if my grandpa could make these changes, then there just might be hope for the rest of us as well. Now, we have seen in our family what happens when we eat the standard American diet. We get the standard American diseases and we die the standard American death. But we've also seen in our family what happens when we make a change. And we've seen that that change is available to everyone, no matter what age or stage of life you are at. In fact, some people say, "Is there hope for me? I've eaten not too well for a lot of years." And I say, you know what? The worse off you are in some ways, the more you have to gain from making a change. Because the gap between where things are and what they could be is room to grow, to heal, to regenerate, and to thrive. And I am not interested, just for the record, in just adding years of misery and suffering and decrepitude to life. We've all known elders who were miserable and frankly didn't really want to be here all that much anymore. But I am interested in how we add life to years so that we can thrive, so that we can love who we are. And, Dan Buettner studied the blue zones, the places in the world where people have lived the longest and healthiest lives. And he reported on this for National Geographic. And he identified 6 of them in Greece and in Italy and in Loma Linda, California, and Costa Rica and Okinawa, Japan. And he looked at all these places and he said, what do they have in common? What's unique about them? Now, one thing these places had in common is people don't just live long, they live well. So it's typical that people in their 80s, 90s, even past 100 are active. They're vibrant, they're doing stuff. They have sex lives, they have joy and passion and pleasure and vitality. They're exercising, they're engaged with the world. They're not just locked up and warehoused in a senior center, kind of sort of coping. And I think that is an inspiration to us, because that's what I want. I want that wisdom grows with maturing, and maturing comes with aging, and aging is actually becoming an elder, not just an older. My dad's an example of that. He's 71. We work out at the gym together. He's buff. And in fact, I hate to say this, I'm no weakling, but he's stronger than me on most everything. That's 71. And we've been, for about 15 years, we've been wondering when the day would come when I would catch up with him. And I keep thinking we're almost there, and I'm getting stronger for the last 15 years. But so is he, at 71 years old. It's crazy. So this stuff works. It really does. And I want to show you how you can put it into action in your life and what I've learned, and I want to share some of the stories. Because, I've been talking about food and living and breathing the food revolution for my entire life. And I'd love to share with you a bit about what that's meant for me and how it's showing up. So, but first, let me ask something about you. How many of you how many of you feel that we live in a toxic food culture? Okay. How many of you believe that food is the foundation of health? Or a foundation? Yeah? Okay. All right. How many of you believe that we need a fundamental change in the way we produce food and the way we consume food? Okay. How many of you are concerned about the deterioration of the biosphere and the stability of our climate for future generations? How many of you are bothered by the way that animals are treated in modern factory farms? How many of you are concerned about the health of our kids and the next generation? How many of you think you know why I'm asking all these questions? Because it's all connected. Because every bite we take is a vote for the health we want and for the world we want. And ultimately, when we make that a conscious vote and an intentional vote, we get to be a part of the solution. We get to be a part of the reclamation and the healing and the transformation. We get to reclaim our humanity. We get to feel our integrity with all of life. We get to know that we are a part of an ecosystem and we are a contribution to that ecosystem. Because food is not just a commodity. It's also a community. It's a web of relationships. And when we choose to make our food choices when we bring them into alignment with our integrity and our values, then we don't just change our health, we actually shift the course of history on this planet. That's how powerful food is. Thank you. So I was inspired by my dad's example and my grandpa's example, honestly, of making big impact on the world. And when I was 16 years old, I founded a nonprofit organization. It was called YES, Youth for Environmental Sanity. And we organized a national tour. We spoke to school assemblies across the United States about the environment and how young people could make a difference in the world. One of the things we encountered as we traveled across the country was stereotypes. In every school, people were putting people in categories and boxes based on the clothes they were listening to or the clothes they were wearing or the music they were listening to based on what they looked like on the outside without really knowing always what was on the inside. So we made a list of the stereotypes we were hearing. It went from A to Z. It was airhead, bimbo, cheerleader, druggie, environmentalist, flirt, gay, hippie, idiot, jock, kid, loser, mod, nerd, outcast, punk, queer, raver, skinhead, tease, ugly, virgin, weirdo, X generation, yuppie, and zero. And any of you ever heard any of those before? Yeah. So, and they're all very dehumanizing, right? In a way, when you judge somebody without honoring the fullness of who they are, because nobody can fit into a label. But we realized that we were traveling around, and people were hearing that environmentalists were coming to school, and they were getting some crazy ideas of what we were going to be like. So we realized some people thought we were going to talk about the environment, and we were going to be like this. Hi, everybody. According to scientists of the modern era, O3 in the upper stratosphere is interacting with oxides of nitrogen in a manner slightly different than was originally perceived in the mid-1980s. And then there were the people who heard we cared about the planet, and they thought we'd be like this. Every time I see a tree being cut down, it's like a dagger was being thrust right through my heart. Save the trees. And then there were the people who heard we were from California. They thought we'd be like this. Hi, all you beautiful people. We just have to open our hearts and love each other. Peace, brothers and sisters. The truth is, we weren't any one of those things. We were all of those things. And a lot more. We were young people who cared. We cared enough to speak out, to take action, to make a difference with our lives. And as we traveled across the United States and reached more than 650,000 students in school assemblies, we realized we were not alone. We saw that in every community there were people who cared, and that the environment meant different things to different people. To some people, the environment was trees and blue sky and saving the climate or stopping rainforest destruction. To other people, the environment was gangs and concrete, trying to get home from school without getting shot. We realized that to be an environmentalist meant to care about people as well as the planet, because it's all connected, and there is no solution for the globe that doesn't also work for humanity. So as we traveled the country, we were learning more from the students we were talking to, I think, even than they were learning from us. And eventually, we ended up working on a global level. We started organizing leadership trainings for young people who wanted to change the world for the better, all over the planet. And I worked with leaders in over 65 countries over the next 20 years, directing this nonprofit. And I worked with people in so many different places and ecosystems. And I dined with Bedouins in the Middle Eastern deserts. And I dined with indigenous peoples in the tropical rainforest. And I dined with African women who were working for social justice in West Africa. And I dined on kale and collard greens and black-eyed peas in the southern United States with African-American social justice activists. And as I traveled the globe, I was realizing that everybody eats. And what we eat has an immense impact. And that's when I got that there is a massive change happening around the world. That the American way of producing food with agrochemicals, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, fertilizers was spreading. That the American way of processing and marketing food with KFC and McDonald's and Baskin Robbins was spreading. And that as our way of eating was being exported and spreading around the world with mass production and with hyper-processing, with the addition of more and more added sugar and industrialized animal products and factory farms, waistlines were expanding. Hospitals were filling up. People were getting sick with diseases that had been unheard of in their countries just a couple generations ago. I'm talking things like Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes. We think it's normal. It's all around us. But you know what? A lot of these diseases were rare just a few generations back in many parts of the world. And they could become rare again.